Okay, so let's talk about the modes and relative minor, the three or four variations of them. The relative modes and the parallel modes, I think the parallel modes are a lot more valuable than understanding their relative modes. But anyway, uh, I got something popping up here. No, I think everything's working okay. Okay. So here I have a two octave C major scale. So just so you have the names, the first one, a major scale is just, uh, any major scale. They also call it Ionian mode. I guess all these names came from Gregorian chants and folks used to do that. So that's C to C. So that's C Ionian or C major. If you go from the second degree of a major scale to the second degree, that they call that Dorian, right? You've all heard that probably. Dorian. The next one is Phrygian, just see it, FR. I think I spelled it wrong. I forgot the R. Phry. Phrygian. The next one is Lydian, which is so that's F to F in C, right? This is E to E in C with no sharps or no flats. This is D to D. So this is the Ionian mode, C to C, which is a major scale. D to D is the Dorian mode. E to E is the Phrygian mode. F to F is the Lydian mode. And they're, like I said, they're not much Mixolydian. The functionality of them is better when they're parallel, which I'll tell you about. Is G to G, and then Aeolian, which is A to A, which is that's I'll just put it in. That's natural minor. Okay, so here's something you want to remember. It's the sixth degree of a major scale is the natural minor, or as they call it, the relative minor. So there's some other theory you probably should, relative minors, natural minor. So if someone says, what's the relative minor for G? It's always the sixth degree, and it has the same key signature. So if we're in G, you count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you get to E. Well, E minor is this, it has the same key signature as G major. So E minor would be E to E in the key of G. Just count up to it's the sixth degree. The sixth note of every major is the relative minor. So if someone says, what's the relative minor of D? Well, that would be B minor. What's the relative minor of A flat? Well, that would be F minor. And they have the same key signature. So that's the easy way to do it. Or if they give you the relative minor, and they say, well, E is the relative minor, what's the relative major? You go up three notes. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Well, that would be G. So this is a major. You go up a minor third up from E. You go up a minor third, and that gives you the relative major. So if someone says, what's the relative major of C minor? You go up a minor third. Well, that would be E flat. So you need three flats. Someone says, what's the relative minor for C? Well, that's E flat. Okay. So you just go up a major third, and well, what's the key signature for E flat major? Well, it's three flats. So the relative minor for E flat is C minor. The relative major for C minor is E flat. It can get a little confusing once in a while, but you'll get it after you work with them a little bit. Just learn, what's the sixth degree of, and that should come pretty easy. What's the sixth degree of every major scale? You use that quite a bit. That's called the relative minor key, or the Aeolian mode. There's also two real common variations. There's all sorts of variations to these scales, but since we're on Aeolian and natural minor, let's knock that out. So the Aeolian mode of C is A to A, which is a natural minor scale. this is just A natural minor, and it has the same key signature as C. So this is okay. So when you're thinking of chords, the one chord in a minor key is always minor. You call this the one chord, just to relate it back to everything else. And then we have this, and then we have this, and we're getting way up there. And then we have A minor again. So in the minor key, if something's in a minor key, it means that its target note is probably the A minor. So this is 1, okay? Then the 2 is diminished if you use it as a trilad. It's a minor 7th flat 5 if you think of it as a 7th chord. But it's a 2 diminished, right? And they're the same as, and the 3 is major, right? The 4 is minor. The 5 is minor. The 6, F natural, I'm sorry, is major. The 7, which would be G, B, and D, is major. And then back to 1. So if you're analyzing something in A minor, the 1 is minor. The 1 chord is A minor, not C, but it has the same key signature. So it's the same chords in the scale of C. They're just given different numbers depending upon what's the key center. Is it C or is it A? C or A minor, I guess I should say. So, okay, so there's 2 variations to this, and let me erase this. And as we do more and more of this will all become second nature to you. The first one, it's real pretty scale. It's called harmonic minor. So if we work in A, and again, we're still talking about the modes. We're just kind of making sure we get all the variations of the natural minor or Aeolian modes, so to speak. And they're all interchangeable, the names. What they do is they raise the 7th note of that scale. They put a sharp, they raise it a half step. Sometimes they take away the flats, sometimes they put a sharp in front of it, but they raise this here a half step, the 7th degree, okay? Okay, so let me explain something here. When you're in C, okay, and this is why they do that, and this is why this harmonic minor became, I believe it's why it became prevalent, is when you have a G chord in C, like you have let's put this, let's do it like this. Let's put a C chord like this, okay, and then let's just have a G chord, G, B, and then let's go back to this voicing. Now, I didn't put it in root position. Okay, remember I did this drop 3. This would be a drop 3 voicing or a second inversion. However, it's really a drop 3 voicing. But anyway, the bass, here's your G chord in C, right? That's the 1, okay? Then we go to the closed position G chord, and then we go back to our C chord. Well, naturally in the major scale, it puts this 7th right here, the 7th degree of the scale, this B natural here, okay, is a half step away from the root, and you get that T, do, T, do, kind of pulls its way up to the root. So you get that pull, you get that T-do resolution. Well, if you're in the minor, if you're in A minor, right, you don't have a half step between the last note of the scale and the first note of the scale. So they sharp that note, and it gives you this. Still, there's the minor quality. Now, gives you that T, gives you that T-do feeling, okay, where it needs to go to the root, okay. So when it does that, it also makes the 5 chord, instead of E minor, it makes it an E major, and adds that pull towards the A. So that's where they get that. Some of them raise the 6th and 7th. They call that melodic minor. Let's see. So we have harmonic minor is just the 7th. Harmonic minor is just, they raise the 6th and 7th for the melodic minor. They raise the 7th. I'll just put a sharp. They sharp the 7th. And melodic minor, they raise the 6th and 7th. They raise the 6th and 7th of a minor scale, of a natural minor scale, which is the Aeolian. I think I spelled it wrong. I-A-N, yeah. I did. So they raise the 6th and 7th, and it gives you that la-ti-do, la-ti-do. In the melody, if you're writing melodies, I guess it makes it a little bit more melodic, so to speak. But it still maintains its minor quality, with the first chord being minor instead of this. Anyway, so those are the 3 variations. I'll once I get into, you kind of understand the theory of this, I'll show you a lot of tunes that have these examples. But just remember, the Aeolian has the natural minor, which is just the same key signature as the major. The harmonic minor, which is the sharp 7, they raise the 7th degree of the scale to give you that leading tone into it, to give you the T-do effect in it. It makes the 5 chord major, so it pulls more towards 1. And the melodic minor, they raise the 6th and 7th, so you get the melodic la-ti-do, and then also on the 5 chord, it has that half step to the root type pull. So those are the 3 variations of Aeolian or natural minor scales that you'll hear. And again, it's just any major scale from the 6th degree to the 6th degree, and those 2 variations. Okay, so that's harmonic and melodic minor, and the 6th degree of any major is the natural minor, also called Aeolian. There are 2 common variations: the harmonic minor and the melodic minor. Raise the 7th or raise the 6th and 7th of any natural minor scale to get those 2. Then the last one is the Locrian mode, which is, as they call it, and of course that's C-R-I-A-N. Locrian is just the 7th degree of any major scale to the 7th degree. Now, when you're doing chords, like there's a lot of tunes in minor keys, right? Like, so it's common to hear something written in A minor and use 1, 4, 5 in minor keys. You can also do this. I mean, something could be written in D Dorian, but you don't have the pull of the chords. If you call D Dorian 1, if you call D minor 1, if you're playing it, if it's in the key of D Dorian, you really could have that. And then you go to G, and then you go to A minor, and then come back down to D. The chords don't have those underlying harmonic effect of the pull being so strong. So they're only temporarily changed from time to time. There are a couple tunes that are, some composers compose things in D Dorian, and some people compose things in E Phrygian, and just kind of all sorts of stuff like that. That it's fun to experiment with. But Anyway, it's easy to do, you know, kind of these subsets. That's the easiest way to think of them. The modes are subsets of the major scale. They all have the same notes when you look at it this way, kind of as horizontal or up and down, or however you want to think of it. Now, this doesn't lend itself to a lot of creativity or a lot of other chords that are possibilities in keys. But when you look at them another way, and I call it parallel. I don't think I've heard anybody say it that way, but that's what I call it, parallel modes. So you remember, like, when we did the major scale, let's stay in C so there's no sharps and no flats, because otherwise, when we're first learning it, it will get a little tricky with key signatures. So C is C major, and 1-to-1 is the Ionian mode. Now, D to D is the Dorian mode. Well, that doesn't do you much good. It's still the same notes, right? It's just D to D. But what happens if what if I want to know, well, what's a C Dorian mode? Okay. Well, I could do it this way. Let's put a D up. I could go, well, between the first and the second note of a Dorian is, that's a whole step, and then there's a half step, then there's a whole step, then there's a half step, then there's a whole step, then there's a whole step, a half step, I'm sorry, and then there's another whole step. I think I did that right. GA, I'm sorry, this is a whole step. Missed that. Whole step. So that's the formula for a Dorian mode. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step. Well, that's all fine and dandy. You could do it that way too. But an easier way is to go, well, since Dorian is the second mode, D is what is the second note of what major scale? Well, remember we were saying that between the first and second note of every major scale is a whole step. So if I figure out D is the second note of what major scale, I'll have the key signature for the D Dorian mode. So in other words, I need to figure out what's major scale C is the second note. Well, for this to be the second note of a major scale, this C, this has to be a whole step down. Well, it's B flat, right? What's a whole step down from C? 1, 2, B flat. So what's the key signature for B flat? Well, it's 2 flats. 1, 2. So if I write a C to C with 2 flats in it, this is my C Dorian mode. It has an E flat and a B flat. And, you know, arrangers usually, and people who talk about improvising and do analysis of improvising, call these chord scales. And what we can talk about that later on. That's, you know, maybe episode 15, you know. But in any event, okay, so that's how you figure. Well, now what if we needed to figure out what the Phrygian C scale was? Let me get my eraser here. Okay, so in the key of C, okay, Phrygian is the third note, right? So this third note, oops, is a major third down to C. Well, what is, if I said, okay, well, I want to know what C Phrygian is, we got to make C the third note of what major scale? So what's a major third down from C? Well, that's A flat. So if I put the key signature for A flat, B, E, A, okay, I got I'm sorry. If I go C to C with an A flat major scale, that's my, I guess start down here. Whoop, that's my C Phrygian. D flat, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. That's C Phrygian. Again, because C, Phrygian mode is the third mode, right? The third mode, its first note is the major third away from the root, from the primary note. So if I want to know what C Phrygian is, I have to go down a major third, because the third mode is Phrygian. It starts a major third up from the root of any major scale. But if I want to know the parallel Phrygian mode, I start with the root and I go down a major third, and that'll give me the key signature for C Phrygian. Okay, let's do another one. It'll become easier. Okay, Lydian. Lydian. It gets a lot of publicity. There's a lot of altered scales they use. Lydian flat 7 is real popular. Okay, so the fourth scale is Lydian, and it goes F to F and C, right? Well, okay, F to F and C. So the first one is whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, right? That's the Lydian scale. However, it is the fourth degree up from the root, or down, however you want to look at it. So if I want to know what C Lydian is, right, I got to go down a perfect fourth from C. Okay, well, if I'm on C, remember a perfect fourth is 5 half step. Here's my C. I have to go down, since the fourth degree is down to C, is a perfect fourth down. To get this to be the fourth note of the scale, I have to go down a perfect fourth. So if I'm on C, 1, 2, 3, I'm sorry, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is a perfect fourth down. 5 half steps. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, G. So G is G sharp, right? A sharp, B flat, B, C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half steps up is a perfect fourth. Again, what is the C Lydian mode? C has to be the fourth note of the major scale. What key signature do I need for C to be the fourth note of the major scale? Well, the fourth note of the major scale in C is a perfect fourth down to C. So if C was the fourth note, what would that major scale be? Well, it's G. Okay, so a C Lydian mode has the key signature of the key of G. So here's a C Lydian scale. C, D, E, F sharp, right? G, A, B, C. So it has a sharp 4, okay? So if you look at this, if we start here, here's our Lydian scale, F to F and C. Whole step, whole step, whole step. Look, whole step, whole step, whole step, F sharp. Half step, okay? Whole step, and we go to F. Half step, B, C, E, F. So the C Lydian has a F sharp, sets up the same whole step, half step. Now, a lot of people relate this back to, they'll relate it back to C. They'll say, well, it has a sharp 4. Well, that's another way you can think of it, okay? Okay, so that's how you figure out Lydian. Okay, let's go to the next one. Mixolydian is the fifth. Okay, so the fifth mode is Mixolydian. It goes from G to G and C. Okay, so again, you do the same process. if G to G in C is Mixolydian, what key am I in if C is the 5th degree of the scale? Okay, so let's put that in there. So we put the C there. Okay, well, it's a perfect 5th down. So what is that? Well, that's like 7 half steps, right? Okay, so if we're on C, we go a perfect 5th down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, F. So the key of F has 1 flat, right? Get my trusty eraser. So if C is the first note, if I want to C Mixolydian, there it is. C, D, E, F, G, A, B flat. So C Mixolydian has a B flat. The reason is I took the 5th degree. The 5th mode is Mixolydian in C. I take the C. I want to C Mixolydian. I got to make this, whatever one I call, I want to make the root of the mode. I got to go down, when it's Mixolydian, down a perfect 5th. Hopefully that's another way to see it. However you need to think of it. Okay, let's do Aeolian. Aeolian is the 6th, right? Okay, so this, where's our, oops, I'm sorry, A. I did the wrong one here. Up to A. This is the 6th degree of a C major scale. This is down a major 6th. C is a major 6th down from what major scale? Or in other words, C is the 6th degree of what major scale? Okay, well, if we go down a major 6th, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. E flat. So the key signature for a C, this is on the C, oh, eraser. A C Aeolian, or honestly, a C natural minor is the key. Oops, I don't want to write E flat, I want to write C. Is a C minor. D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, and then C. So C minor is the same as E flat major. And now, here's the next thing. If you want the 3 variations, that's the C natural minor, the C Aeolian, the C, it's called harmonic minor. I would just put a natural here to get rid of the flat, and I'd put another natural here to get rid of the flat, and it'd be harmonic. It would be C melodic minor, or if I get rid of the raised 6, there's the C harmonic minor. So, okay. And then, of course, the last one, we'll do it, is Locrian. Okay, so C is the 7th degree of what major scale? Well, that's real easy, because now instead of counting down, you can just count up. Well, what's a half step, a major 2nd up from C? Well, it's D flat. See, because see here, here's our 7th. Let me get rid of some of this chaos here. Okay, so here was our C, D, E. Here was our natural Aeolian mode. And I'm just going to, so we're saying this, the 7th degree, this is our Locrian mode. It's the 7th degree from the 7th degree. Okay. So we have to say, if I want to see Locrian mode, C needs to be the 7th degree of what major scale? Well, it's D flat, because see, there's a half step here in between it, B, C. So if this is C, then what's this note? So I have to go up a half step. C is the 7th degree of what major scale? Because the Locrian mode is the 7th degree. So it's the same key signature as D flat. So B flat, E, A, D, G flat. So a C Locrian mode has 5 flats. So if I put this in here, E, F, G, A, B flats. That's the C Locrian mode. And if you look at it here, the first step in the Locrian mode is a half step. Well, here, C, D flat, right? Then the next one from C to D, that's a whole step. Well, this is D flat to E flat. That's a whole step. This is D to E. Well, that's a whole step. Here, E flat to F, that's a whole step. Now here, E to F, that's a half step in the Locrian mode. Well, this is F to G flat, that's a half step. It just keeps the same relationship. But the trick to it is knowing how to relate it back to the major scale and then figuring out what the key signature is for that major scale. So kind of just to kind of review, and it's probably a little bit challenging to get it under your skin. But again, is like Ionian is easy. That's just C to C, right? Then you say, to get the Dorian, which is the second mode, C is the 2nd degree of what major scale? Well, to figure that out, since in a major scale, remember this. Remember the first thing we talked about? A, this is G, B, C. Is between the first and the second note of a major scale is a whole step. Well, now you got to think C isn't the first note. I want to make it the second note to get my Dorian mode. Well, C is the 2nd degree of B flat. So C Dorian would have 2 flats, okay? Then the next thing is to get my Phrygian mode for C, I have to think C is the 3rd degree of what major scale? That's the easiest way to do it. Well, C is the 3rd degree of, well, it's down a major third, A flat. So the key for A flat is B, E, A, 4 flats. Okay. You do the same thing for F. F, Phrygian or Lydian, is the 4th mode from F to F and C. Well, if I want to know what the Phrygian mode is or Lydian mode is in C, what notes would comprise that? I would go, well, C is the 4th degree of what major scale? Well, here I got to get down a perfect 4th. Well, that's G. G has the key signature of 1 sharp. So you can see how valuable key signatures are now, right? So my C Lydian scale, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C. There's an F sharp in there, okay? So you go through that, and that's how modes. Now, again, it's easy, when they're in the same key, right? When they're all relative to each other, it's when they're parallel is what gives it value. And that's where we get into modal interchange chords and things written in modes. But the modal interchange, you hear that every once in a while. I don't know if you're familiar with some jazz tunes. Wave by Antonio Carlos Jobim starts off with a D minor G7 vamp, and then it goes to D major. A lot of people analyze that because it's kind of the 1-4 in Dorian, and then it goes to the major, switches back to a major mode. So that's kind of like a Dorian vamp, they say. Now you could make the argument too that it's a natural minor vamp too, that way too. But I think it's probably a D Dorian vamp is what it seems to do. So those are things, and we can do a lot of examples like that. So I hope you found this interesting. It's a little challenging. You kind of got to get used to going to figure out the modes. And then you got to do this in every key. What's G? Locrian, G is the 7th degree of what major scale? Well, A flat, and you can the way to do it is to play head games with yourself. Is it's like think of what notes, not necessarily when you have your instrument, if you're, at work and have some spare time, try to figure out in your head, well, what notes would be in, A flat Lydian, stuff like that. And what's the key signature for it? And that'll help you, you get this. And it's probably valuable to do that. It probably is. Probably has more value than a lot of things with this stuff. But the real value of this is when we get more into some of the more advanced chord changes and stuff. You'll see how the modal interchange chord come into play. So anyway, more on this a little bit later. Next, we'll do some more analysis of. I'll do secondary dominance, the related 2 chords, sub 5/7. What are some other things that they try to ball you up on? Tritone substitutions. Sub 5/7 of 1, related to of sub 5/7 of 1, common turnarounds and things like that. And then what's real interesting with the modes is the chord changes that create kind of cliches that everyone hears, but a lot of folks analyze that as key change, and it really isn't. So that's next up. I hope you like this, and if you have any questions, post them below. It'll be nice to get a conversation going about it. All right, thanks a lot.